SubhanAllah, it's always hard to top a shahada in the beginning. Like, where do we go? We already reached the height of the evening, alhamdulillah, but we'll try our best, inshallah. We have our brother Mohamed Zin. I'm brother Sanjay, you guys know me. This is my brother Mohamed Zin. He's here for us again. He was here for the relay event that we did a couple months ago, and alhamdulillah, he's always available to come in, inshallah. So, we're going to talk about Ali ibn Abi Talib today. I didn't give an intro for him because he would hate me for giving an intro. He would definitely, like, there's some brothers I can't intro. But what I can say about Mohammed is I've known him for maybe 6-7 years now. And alhamdulillah, he's always been there. He's always been there for me as a brother. And he's always been available if I needed him like that. So alhamdulillah, jazakallah khair. And so we're going to talk about Ali ibn Abi Talib, right? The cousin and the son-in-law of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And so this, like we said last week for Aisha, she deserves a whole halaqah in and of itself. Okay? She deserves a whole halaqah in and of itself. And I want you all to, because I'm gonna let him drive, and I'm just gonna, I'm gonna sprinkle in some things. But inshallah ta'ala, we're gonna talk about Ali as much as we possibly can. Before we get started, I wanted to mention a hadith of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And it's about salawat. A couple weeks ago, I came here and I told you guys that every time I say Prophet or Muhammad or Nabi or Rasulullah, I want you to say sallallahu alaihi wasallam afterwards. Because listen to this hadith, it'll tell you why. So a companion comes to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and he says, "Oh Messenger of Allah, I invoke salawat upon you often. Like I send praise upon you often. How much of my supplication should be dedicated for you?" And Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam says, "As much as you wish." And the companion then asks 1/4, a quarter, and he says, "That's good, but the more the better." And the companion asks, "A half?" And he says, "That's good, but as you wish, but the more the better." The same response, right? Then the companion says 2/3, and the Prophet has the same response. "That's good, but the more the better," right? That same response, "As you wish, but the more the better." And then the companion at that point says, "Should I dedicate all of my dua to just sending salawats upon you?" And the Prophet ﷺ says, "In that case, your needs will be sufficed and your sins will be forgiven." SubhanAllah. Everything you need, this is sending salawat is a cure for so much. And we should take advantage of it. My brother was keeping track a few weeks ago about how much times we send salawat per halaqah, right? So he was keeping track. And he had to step out a little earlier for something. But SubhanAllah, we were over 100. SubhanAllah. We were over 100 just on a Friday night. And the Prophet said that if you send more salawat, your needs will be sufficed, your sins will be forgiven. Ibn Abi says, no servant sends abundant salawat upon the Prophet Muhammad except that Allah illuminates his heart, forgives his sins, puts his heart at ease, and makes his matters easy. And it's just as easy as saying sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. You have that opportunity all day, and especially have it here when you listen. And make sure you listen attentively. Inshallah tonight, we did order pizza for everybody, inshallah. So we're gonna have that afterwards. So be attentive. Don't think about the pizza. I probably shouldn't have said that. Don't think about the pizza. Think about what we're talking about, inshallah. Okay? So let's get started, inshallah.
اللهم صل على محمد في الأولين وصل على محمد في الآخرين وصل على محمد في الملأ الأعلى إلى يوم الدين صل على محمد في كل وقت وحين. نحمد الله رب العالمين ونصلي ونسلم على خاتم الأنبياء وسيد المرسلين سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. اللهم إنا نسألك علما نافعا ورزقا طيبا وعملا متقبلا. اللهم أرنا الحق حقا وارزقنا اتباعه وأرنا الباطل باطلا وارزقنا اجتنابه. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. I want to thank all of you for being here on a Friday night. You can be doing something else. Sina is right there, having fun, enjoying your life, eating all the food that you need to. But you're here nourishing something else, and that's your mind and your soul. Your mind by gaining the ilm, gaining the knowledge of remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and His Prophet and His messengers and the Ahlul Bayt, and being around brothers and sisters who also nourish that mind. And then secondly, being in a place where the angels are, alhamdulillah, now surrounding us. As the hadith says, that there is not a house of worship where people gather remembering Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and talking and engaging in their deen about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, except that the angels surround them and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala writes them off as those He has mercy on. And when they leave that majlis, when they leave that halaqah, when they leave that place, the angel will say, go, you are, all of your bad deeds have been replaced with good deeds. So we ask Allah to make us of those who are forgiven, and I urge myself and all of you to renew our intentions and make it for the sake of Allah. With that being said, I want to start off with a very important, which I feel is something that needs to be said. And that we are a people, we Ahlul Sunnati wal Jama'ah, we respect those who respect Ahlul Bayt, and we love those who love Ahlul Bayt, and we ourselves respect and love Ahlul Bayt as they deserve to be respected and loved. And Ali radiallahu anhu Allah is one of the most transgressed against the Sahaba, and the most oppressed of the Sahaba in terms of his narrative, being told by people who do not fully respect the sunnah that he himself followed. And he, radiallahu anhu, is innocent from any following of him that is not like the following of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, or is not the strict following of the sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And you're going to see why in a second. Ali radiallahu anhu, in his description, how was he in his description? First of all, Ali radiallahu anhu is described as when he stands amongst men, he's not short, but he's not tall. Perfect height. Just like the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when you stood in front of him, you didn't need to look up to see him, or you didn't look down, and he's always at eye level. And Ali radiallahu anhu was that perfect height. He looked a lot like the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam because he was related to him. How was he related to him? He was his cousin. And he looked a lot like the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that the Sahaba said that when he walked and we saw his back, you would think that was the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam walking. He said he was described to have had a big beard, and as he grew older it became more white, and that he did not have any hair, and that he was extremely, extremely muscular, to a degree that they said you can see the muscles in his forearm when he just moves them a little. Extremely muscular and very strong. And this is a very important detail. Obviously, we're not going to be able to tell the story of Ali radiallahu anhu from beginning to end, but we're going to try. And we're going to have stoppages where we talk about the different parts of his life that are important to us, and I think that's the discussion that Sanjay wanted to facilitate. And truth be told, in order to learn about Ali radiallahu anhu, there are series for Sheikh Al-Sudan and a few others, very long series, very long hours of lectures about Ali radiallahu anhu. There's so much about him radiallahu anhu. So I urge you not to limit yourself only to what's being said here, because this is only a drop in the sea of the story of Ali radiallahu anhu. With that being said, Ali radiallahu anhu grew up, who knows where he grew up, radiallahu anhu. Where specifically in Mecca? When I say in Mecca, someone's going to say Saudi. Saudi didn't exist until 1932. Some history for you. Where did Ali radiallahu anhu grow up? Who can tell us? The house of the Prophet. You guys thought you were just going to come here, they're going to get all the information easy. No. This is interactive, inshallah. So Ali radiallahu anhu grew up in the house of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, because Mecca had a flood at the time, and there was a mass starvation around the city. So Al-Abbas and the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam went to their uncle. Who's their uncle? Subhanallah. Who's their uncle, guys? I know you guys know. Yeah, go for it. Huh? Abu Talib. Guys, wallah, there's no trick questions. It's very straightforward. No punishments for getting the questions wrong, I promise. Do you guys punish people here?
Not yet, not yet.
Why are people scared, man? Anyway, so Abu Talib, they went to him and they said, each one of us will take one of your sons and will raise him as our own. And so this can ease the load, the financial load on you for a bit. So Muhammad took Ali and Abbas took Ja'far ibn Abi Talib, also one of the most famous of our companions of Allah alayhim ajma'in. So Ali grew up in the house of the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam. And when the revelation came down to the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, Ali was 10 years old. And how he found out about Islam is that he walked in on the Prophet and Khadija praying. Jibreel had revealed to the Prophet how to pray. And so he walked in on them praying and he asked them, what is this? What are you guys doing? And so Ali so the Prophet answered him, he told him, Allah has revealed to me that there's only one God, I am the messenger of God. Follow me in this path. That was word for word what the Prophet told him. So Ali I want you to see the wisdom that Ali has. Even at the age of 10, how wise of a young man he is. He tells him, let me go consult my father and come back to you and see what we can do about this religion. He doesn't right away say yes, or he doesn't, no, let me just sleep on it, let me think about it, let me consult the elders and get back to you. Which one of us here doesn't wish that they're always the person that people come to make decisions right away and that you get that decision right? But that's not how decisions are made in this dunya. That's ever changing. You always need to consult others. We have an entire chapter in the Quran named Surah Shura, right? Asking, consulting, consultation. وَأَمْرُهُمْ شُورَى بَيْنَهُمْ. Even in our Islamic political practices, it's not this idea that the Khalifa is one and he makes the final decision by himself. The Khalifa always would return. Umar ibn Khattab had a council and delegation that he returned to. Abu Bakr, same thing. Uthman, same thing. Ali alayhim ajma'in. All of them had consultants that they would return to. So you see the hikmah of Ali already, that wisdom being built up in this young man who grew up in the house of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And so he slept on it and he came back to the Prophet the next day and he told him, I did not go to Abu Talib because I was scared that he would be angry with me, knowing that Abu Talib is an idol worshiper. He worshipped idols, unfortunately. And the ajma' ahl al-ilm, there's ijma' that he died upon this. So Ali told him, I ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa annaka Rasulullah. He accepted Islam and then he went to Abu Talib and told him, the next day he slept in Abu Talib's house. Abu Talib saw him praying, and the way Prophet Muhammad was praying. I'm going very quickly through this story because there's so many stories that we want to go through. And he tells him, what are you doing? And he tells him, Muhammad told me about this religion that goes back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the original, the true religion of Allah. And so I followed him. And so Abu Talib told him, follow him. There is nothing that Muhammad will tell you to do or consult you to do except that it will benefit you. How I wish Abu Talib would have taken that advice. How I wish Abu Talib would have become Muslim. And Abu Bakr on the day of Fatih Mecca, on conquest of Mecca, Abu Talib, the father of Abu Quhafa, he came to accept Islam and he told, and Abu Bakr started to cry. Because his father accepted Islam at a very, very old age. Some he said 99, some said older. He was 99 years old. And so he told him, and so the Prophet asked him, why are you crying? Your father accepted Islam. He told him, how I wish Rasulullah that Abu Talib was the one who would have accepted Islam. Because he knows how much it would have meant to the Prophet for Abu Talib to accept Islam. Abu Talib defended this deen with his body, with his heart, with his mind, with everything he had. Look at what he tells his own son. Follow the religion. As Muhammad would never advise you wrongfully. But sometimes, wallahi subhanAllah, sometimes someone will consult you of something and they themselves are not capable of carrying out what they're consulting you with. And so that does not mean that you throw away what this person is consulting you with. Sometimes, subhanAllah, you see someone, let's say someone walks in here fully tatted, right, dressed as someone who perhaps you wouldn't take advice from. And he gets on the mic and he gives some advice. He tells you memorize the Quran, learn Arabic, memorize Quran. And he doesn't speak Arabic, he doesn't memorize Quran. You look at him and say, who are you to advise me? Sometimes Allah will allow for the truth to roll on the tongue of a person who is the furthest person away from the truth. And there's a hadith of this where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, إِنَّ اللَّهَ لَيُؤَيِّدُ هَذَا الدِّينَ وَلَوْ بِالرَّجُلِ الْفَاسِقِ. And another riwayah, بِالرَّجُلِ الْفَاجِرِ. Indeed, Allah would support this religion even with a non-righteous man, a fasiq. SubhanAllah. So never belittle a constructive criticism, even a bad criticism of someone. Consider yourself humbled. Consider yourself someone taking this criticism humbly and move on with your life. No matter what the source of the criticism is or what the consultation is. Back to the story of Ali radiallahu anhu, he grows up in the house of the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, and one day after the Prophet sallam, the famous incident where he gets on the hill and he calls all of Quraysh and he gathers them and he says, Ya Bani Abdul, he calls all the tribes, Ya Bani Umayyah, Ya Bani Adi, Ya Bani Abdullah, all of them. And he tells them that if there was an army behind this hill, 13 days after the incident, it's a very, very famous incident, it's the first time the Prophet ﷺ went public with his da'wah. 13 days he gathers all of Bani Hashim and all of another tribe, and he gathers them to a feast. And he gets up and he says, which one of you gives me bay'ah to follow me in this deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Man minkum yashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa anni rasulullah wa yubay'uni ala dhalik. And no one got, he said, who of you will follow me that testify there's no deity worthy of except Allah and follow me on this path of Islam? Nobody got up to support him. Nobody got up to give him bay'ah. Except Ali. Ali got up amongst these only 12 years old at this point. He gets up in this whole gathering and says, إِنِّي أُبَايِعُكَ أَنَّهُ لَا إِلَهَ إِلَّا اللَّهُ وَأَنَّكَ رَسُولُ اللَّهِ. And so Prophet took him and left. Ali radiallahu anhu's mind and wisdom is already being prepped from a young age, to the degree that the Prophet uses him almost as an intelligence operative. And when the wufud and the people would come for Hajj in Mecca, the Prophet would usually go give da'wah, and people would become Muslim just because of obviously what the Prophet said. There's even a narration that the Prophet he read Surah Al-Falaq, قُلْ أَعُوذُ بِرَبِّ الْفَلَقِ مِنْ شَرِّ مَا خَلَقَ, very short surah, a man became Muslim because of it. His uncle Abu Lahab would walk behind him and say, do not follow this man, he's a majnoon, he's a this, he's a that, he's a that. And every person, the Prophet would make them enter Islam. This man, Abu Lahab, would allow him, would yartad, yasbu'u. He would make him leave the deen. After he had already become Muslim, saved, he would make him leave the deen. So the Prophet is very smart. He was like, you know what? I'm going to stay in Dar al-Arqam. Dar al-Arqam was actually on the outskirts of Mecca. It belonged to a young man. His name is Al-Arqam, Ibn Abi Talib. And the Prophet chose that strategic point so people don't know where he's meeting. He's meeting on the outskirts of Mecca. So with this young man that no one would think that Muhammad, who's 40 years old or 43 at this point, is meeting with Al-Arqam in his house. And so he sends Ali, he tells him, I want you to stay around the Kaaba, and anyone who asks about me, about Islam, bring him to Al-Arqam, to the Dar al-Arqam, and I will give the da'wah there, instead of having Abu Lahab follow me in Mecca. So Ali is choosing who he goes up to very smartly. And one man is Abu Dhar. He comes and he asks about Muhammad. And he's told, he's Majnoon, Sha'ir, all the things, right? The propaganda, they're doing great PR for the Prophet. He's crazy, stay away from him. And so Ali goes up to him, he said, oh, are you asking about Muhammad? He says, yes. He said, no, don't worry. Why don't you just come stay over at my house while you're here for the duration in Mecca? The haqq of the traveler is 3 days. They would keep them there for 3 days. After that, the Hujjaj would leave, and they would not come back till the following year. So he stays with Ali and the whole time is not talking, they're just getting to know each other. He's trying to see what this guy is about. And then on the 3rd day, the man tells him, by Allah, I want to ask you a question. Do you know who Muhammad is? Do you know where he is? He says, yes, I know where he is. You want me to take you to him? He says, yes. He says, okay, follow me, and on the way, if you see me, bend down all of a sudden, start to pick up firewood or fix my shoes, walk away and meet me tomorrow in this location. So he walks by, and guess who they meet? Abu Lahab on the way. So radiallahu anhu, he gets down, he starts to pick up firewood, acting like nothing happened. The highest level of intelligence, not even the CIA can pull that off. Right? It's Abu Lahab. So, CIA, I'm just kidding, alright? I'm just kidding, please. So, Ali radiallahu anhu, he does this, and the next day, Abu Dhar comes to meet Ali radiallahu anhu on the outskirts of Mecca, and he takes him to the Prophet ﷺ, and Abu Dhar says, as soon as I saw the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, I knew that if I did not know that this man was a prophet, I would have thought that he is something divine, that he is something from Allah. As soon as I saw his face, he didn't need to say anything. I said, I saw the nur, and I said, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa annaka rasulullah. So from his early days, Ali radiallahu anhu is highly trained in the nusra of this religion, in the pushing the goals of this religion forward. And you're going to see more and more how this plays out in his story radiallahu anhu. You want to add anything on your thoughts or comments, concerns, criticisms?
No concerns or criticisms yet. So I think what's really interesting here is Ali is 10 years old, 12 years old at this time, and he's publicly giving da'wah. He's publicly calling people to Islam at his age, right? I think this is a good point of self-reflection for our own selves. How often do we call people to Islam, even in our actions? Or do our actions actually negatively portray Islam? Right? Are we negatively portraying Islam with our actions? Right? I think we sometimes forget the responsibility that we have as Muslims. There's a lot of talk about interfaith dialogue. The best interfaith dialogue is not dialogue at all. The best dialogue is what you do with your actions. Right? You will show Islam better with your actions than you can ever do with your words sometimes. I don't feel like crashing out. Earlier I did when I thought about what I was going to say just now. There's an organization, I won't say the name of the organization, but they, unfortunately, a couple years ago, they did something called the Abu Talib Award. Abu Talib Award, and it was like an interfaith award that they gave out to people who were friends of Muslims. And I remember, it showed up on my timeline again yesterday, just fittingly. So I was.
You have to prep me for that.
You
can't just throw that out like that.
And it's a very big organization as well. But the point being here, please don't do that. Abu Talib Award, it's as if we got so tone deaf as a community. Muslims, the Ummah, is so tone deaf sometimes that we just want to. You guys have to understand. You guys have to understand how I'm trying to hold back my words. But the point being, as a convert, I can tell you as a convert, 8 years in Muslim, the last thing that anybody who's a friend of Islam and someone who's part of our interfaith community needs is Abu Talib Award. Abu Talib was someone who the Prophet ﷺ loved, and who the Prophet ﷺ was so hurt when he passed away because he didn't accept Islam, he didn't become Muslim. And now, we have communities that go out and give an Abu Talib Award and say, okay, this is because you're a friend of Islam. Are you kidding me? I'm sugarcoating a lot of my words here. But what I'm trying to say is, we have to try and understand, not just from a Dawah perspective, but from a convert perspective. When people become Muslim, that's something that Ali knew very, very well. And think about it, Ali's father was who? Abu Talib. Right?
That's a very good, if I can jump in, what you just said reminded me of something, subhanAllah, that the year of sadness didn't just happen to the Prophet ﷺ. The Prophet lost his uncle and his wife in the span of 3 days, or some guys say a few months, in a year called the year of sadness. And he ﷺ did not smile for 10 months after that. Sahaba said, we did not see him smile, and the Prophet, one of his descriptions, his shama'id, is that kana bis-sama, he's always someone who smiled. So, Ali, people forget that the year of sadness also happened to Ali radiallahu anhu, because he lost his mother, Khadija. He looked to her as his mother. He lived with the Prophet ﷺ, and they were the ones who raised him. And obviously, his biological father and Abu Talib. So imagine the pain and the hurt and the suffering. Even after the Prophet after Abu Talib passed away, how much the Prophet ﷺ suffered. He was right there, about to say, the Prophet kept begging him, just say one word, I can excuse Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with it for you. Say one word. And he's holding, and because the Quraysh, all these people are standing around Abu Talib, they're telling him, whispering to him, you're going to leave the religion of your forefathers. And so they wouldn't let the Prophet ﷺ come near him, come to his head. So the Prophet ﷺ is standing on Abu Talib's feet, and he's shaking his feet and saying, please say one word for Abu Talib and that name. And even if Abu Talib died a disbeliever, we still respect the fact that he defended our Prophet ﷺ, which can be, he's done more than what can be said for most Muslims. Than most Muslims, we will never get the honor of defending the Prophet ﷺ except verbally and with, by fighting off other ideologies and obviously increasing our ilm and our knowledge of the deen. But for him to defend the Prophet ﷺ physically, that's a great honor to have, even for someone who's a disbeliever. For it to be obviously watered down to some sort of trophy award, it's definitely tone deaf, like you mentioned. Next time, give like a warning or a trigger warning.
Trigger warning, yeah. Point being, less awards as a community, more dawah, more action, more showing who our Prophet is with our actions, right? If we don't feel comfortable talking about the Prophet, at least through your actions embody who he was. That's how you appeal to non-Muslims. Even the debates, that's a long time. But like we just focus on actions. That's what I can say about that.
Speaking of actions, actually, Ali radiallahu anhu was the man of action concept. The main character trait that I want you to take from Ali radiallahu anhu tonight is bravery. How brave he was radiallahu anhu in every sense of the word, and how he embodied in every story I'm about to tell you the trait of bravery. Ali radiallahu anhu, during the hijrah of the Prophet ﷺ, the famous incident of the Prophet ﷺ requests from this young man, Ali, to lay in his bed in his stead. Ali radiallahu anhu at the time is 20 years old. And imagine all of the fasa'il, all of the different parts of Quraysh are strategically moving to eliminate and assassinate the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. Using our modern terminology, that's exactly what they're doing. They're taking out the opposition. They're eliminating the voice of the opposition effectively in Mecca. And what does the Prophet do? He asks Ali radiallahu anhu to lay in his bed, cover himself, cover his head, and tells him, do not worry, nothing will harm you. And he tells him, after you're done, the next thing that you need to do is go return the amanat that I have for people in Mecca. Even though they hated the Prophet, they kept their amanat with them, their trusts, their money. Obviously there was no banks back then. So in order for people to diversify their portfolio and put their wealth in different areas, what they had to do was give it to different people. So that Allah, something happened to this money, for example, they have another person who's keeping their wealth for them. So Prophet Muhammad ﷺ was one of the most popular people that people gave their amanas to. And even he ﷺ, when he left, leaving his house, his home behind, leaving everything behind, he did not take any of these amanat with him. He left Ali and entrusted him with these amanat and told him to go return it to the people and come back and come meet him in Medina. Who knows how long it took for the Prophet ﷺ? Okay, you raise your hand. I'm going to ask the question. Go for it. But who knows how long it took for the Prophet ﷺ to do the hijrah from Mecca to Medina? How many days did it take the Prophet ﷺ? I gave you guys a clue. It was days. How many days? The sister? Okay, go ahead. 29. Not bad. Not bad, but no, a little far away. How many days? Who can tell us? Yes? 19? Very close. How many days does it take usually to get from Mecca to Medina? By, let's say by the train that they have now. 2 hours, right? By a horse, you're going really fast, maybe a day. On a camel, straight from Mecca to Medina, 3 days. The Prophet took the Prophet 13 days. 13 days to travel from Mecca to Medina. Ali radiallahu anhu walked from Mecca to Medina. And he got there before the Prophet ﷺ stayed in Quba. And the Prophet ﷺ took 13 days because he was very, very detail-oriented, very, taking a very secure path, taking his time. He knows he's being looked at. Obviously, Medina is south of Mecca. So the Prophet ﷺ took north and then wrapped back around, taking a much longer route. They did not think that he would take. Only one person from Quraysh found him, it was Suraqa bin Malik, and that's a longer story. Ali radiallahu anhu walked from Mecca to Medina. And when he walked from Mecca to Medina, he reached Medina and he could not move. When Prophet entered the city, he looked for Ali and he could not find him. He said, "Where is Ali?" They said to Rasulullah, his legs are cut up and bleeding. Walking in the desert is no easy fate. If you're from a desert, any desert country, Morocco, Algeria, Libya, Egypt, any of these areas, I don't know if any of the South Asian countries have deserts, but Allah musta'an. But nothing like the North African deserts. Very, very hot. If you just put your foot in the sand for a few minutes, you'll start to blister and to burn. No joke. So Ali walking in this climate, his legs are cut up. So the Prophet ﷺ came and he ﷺ put his hand on his feet and he rubbed them, and Ali said, "They never hurt me ever again." So it makes complete sense. Ali is a very powerful, strong individual. You'll see on multiple occasions the Prophet ﷺ is giving him this karama, this ability to be able to move forward, and he said, "They never hurt me till the day he died."
And let me jump in real quick. I want to put this in perspective for you guys, right? Because Muhammad said bravery. Bravery is how he would describe Ali. And that really is how he would describe his affection, his love towards Prophet, putting himself in harm's way, right? The story that he just told about people, the tribes, the 7 tribes that tried to kill the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. The Prophet Muhammad ﷺ says, basically to Ali, you're a decoy. You're going to be the one in my bed in 7 days. Right? He's 20 something, right? And he's the one now acting as this decoy for the Prophet ﷺ, putting his entire life on the line for the Prophet ﷺ, in a vulnerable position. Ali has to go sleep in the bed of the Prophet ﷺ, knowing that these people are going to come and try and kill him. Right? And think about what's so beautiful is the narrations say that Ali was fast asleep. He wasn't scared about anything. He was snoring. That's what the narrations say. People are coming to kill him and he's snoring. He's fast asleep. He's sleeping the best sleep of his life. He's not concerned whatsoever. That's the bravery of Ali, right? Ibn Abbas says that Ali freed every part of his body from the hellfire that night by putting it all on the line for the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. SubhanAllah. So just on that.
You're going to see that the reason Ali is always being chosen by the Prophet ﷺ, is always being given this higher rank, is because he is willing to make the sacrifice. He's willing to be the one to get his hands dirty from day one. From the moment he called Bani Hashim from the moment he called his own tribe to Islam, he's the only one to get on. I'm there for you, Rasulullah. This awkward silence, all these people who don't believe in you, all these people who want to see you fail, Abu Lahab who actively is actively going out of his way trying to make your da'wah fail. And who is the one always defeating Abu Lahab's mockery of the Prophet? It's Ali radiallahu anhu. And then he starts to literally put his body on the line. What does this show you? That if we as an ummah truly had yaqeen in what the Prophet said, followed his rulings, and then acted upon it, with that yaqeen in our hearts, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to raise your status. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to make you beyond exception. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to, you think you're going to take just 3 steps. I'm going to take these few steps thinking that I'm going to reach right here. But Allah pushes you 10. And you start to realize, subhanAllah, just what we saw in Syria. All these people that you saw, and I know there's perhaps a lot of confusion about, who's who and what's what, and there's a lot going on. Regardless, these people set out for a specific goal. To just retake Halab, the city of Halab. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala pushed them further and further and further in Damascus. And then Asad, he leaves the country and he flees. Who would have thought? Who would have thought? You follow the footsteps, you do your part and leave to Allah. You do your best until Allah leave the rest. But having Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and this yaqeen in your heart and following the footsteps of the Prophet, it's a completely different level. Doing that for Islam, you're on a completely different plane. And so you need to center your mind around that, regardless of whether it's your studies, your job, your family. If you make it so that my intention is I'm working this job so that I gain money to start a righteous family for the sake of Allah. I'm working this job so I can spend the money for the sake of Allah. Tenfold, your risk is increased. tenfold, your steps are made easy. But it has to be with the thought of having Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in mind, centering Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in your mind. The same way Ali radiallahu anhu was centered on the battle of Badr. And we're now jumping into the next phase.
You know what the problem is though? Like, I'm not getting controversial this time, I promise. But you know what the problem really is?
No pressure.
We don't have, no, I'm not pressure. The problem really is that we don't put our trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with everything and anything in our lives. We never put enough trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. As people, myself included, we never put our trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala enough. Right? We have these examples of great people. Ali, who would get in the Prophet's bed and wait for people to come and kill him? Which one of us is doing that? I'm not doing that. Right? I know myself.
You never know.
I never know. Okay, yeah. When I'm ready to crash out, maybe. What I'm trying to get at though is we have these great examples from the companions. Right? Abu Bakr, who gave all of his wealth, and when asked what he left, Allah and His Messenger. So how many of us will give all of our wealth and not worry about what's tomorrow? Right? It's so hard, it's so difficult. Right? When we have all these great opportunities that come up for us, and you know, we have these examples of these great people who give everything in the way of Allah. And for us, very little is a lot. For us, that extra dollar is too much. It's not in my budget. I can't, you know what I mean? I spend too much on whatever. I can't spend that. No, we have to be able to say, Allah's going to give me this back. This doesn't even belong to me in the first place. Nothing we have belongs to us. That's the mindset of the companions. That was the mindset of Ali. He never lived like something belonged to him. Ever. He never lived like anything belonged to him. Everything came from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We came from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Why don't we live our lives accordingly trying to serve Him? Right?
What much time do you have?
We can go.
I can go?
Okay.
What you just reminded me is, this is exactly why Islam today, guys, is combated at every single point. What Sanjay just said, nothing belongs to you, nothing is yours, nothing, think about it, nothing actually, not even your body. On the contrary, you have a society that tells you, this Western society that tells you and sells to you this idea and it markets it to you and gets you basketball players and soccer players and all these different actresses and actors and celebrities to sell you this idea, to sell you products for you, about you, made for you, customized for you. But they don't benefit you. Everything about your Islam does the opposite. It tells you stay away from material. Nothing is, it's not about you. You're not the center. Allah is the center. On the contrary, your society tells you obey your thirst. My body, my choice. Right? All these slogans for me. It's about me. It's centered around me. When it's all Allah. This body, every effect, every mechanism in your body, every cell, every tissue, every muscle, every fiber muscle, every part of it is for Allah. So, someone who operates on that level, that everything is Allah's, everything belongs to Allah, my body, my hand, my arms, my eyes, my ears, is on a completely different plane. And you're operating very differently to everyone else operating in our society. You don't fall for marketing schemes the same way other people do. You don't obey your thirst the same way everyone else does. As a matter of fact, you take 29 to 30 days out of the year to fast and go out of your way not to eat from sun up to sun. And spend the night in worship. Everything about our deen brings you closer to Allah, nourishes that ruh, that soul. Your ruh requires, three things require nourishment. Your physical body, by eating. Your mind, through ilm and knowledge. And your ruh, your soul, through worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. How do you feed your soul? This ruh that Allah put in your body, how do you feed it? What keeps it sustained? You know when you're going down in a slump in Iman, that's because your ruh is not sustained. There's not enough qiyam, there's not enough salawat. The Prophet ﷺ, Allahumma salli sallam wa sallam wa sallam. Salah Rasul, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Right? There's not enough salat, there's not enough Quran. Your daily width of Quran, at least 5-10 pages of Quran a day, that's 2 pages, 3 verses, anything. That means that you need to nourish that soul. And you see that theme with Ali radiallahu anhu. He was described by Ibn Abbas radiallahu anhu, the most abid of the Sahaba, the most in worship. The most in worship of the Sahaba in ibadah, they say Ali radiallahu anhu. Meaning that one of the most, obviously you have Abu Bakr, you have Umar, but he was one of the most. And you see how that spills into his action. On the Battle of Badr, when the Prophet ﷺ, he needs to choose 3 people from his own tribe to do mubaraza, to spar the enemy, to raise the morale of the Muslims. He chooses Abu Ubaidah, Hamza radiallahu anhu, and Ali radiallahu anhu. Abu Ubaidah radiallahu anhu is unfortunately stabbed and he dies due to his wounds later. Hamza radiallahu anhu kills Utbah, and then he goes on to kill the person who struck Abu Ubaidah, and then Ali radiallahu anhu wins in his battle, in his sparring session. In the Battle of Uhud, in every single battle, Ali radiallahu anhu is the flag bearer. Do you understand what it means to be a flag bearer? The way Quraysh's battles operated was basically capturing the flag. Whoever reached the opposite enemies, you guys are laughing, think Call of Duty or not. This was the battlefield back then. Whoever topples the opposite enemy's flag, the army is brought down and defeated. That's how they operate. So when you gave the flag bearer, the flag or the raya, this needs to be the strongest person in your army. That's why Musa in the battle, and much later in one of the battles, his hand gets cut off, he puts the flag in the other hand, he puts it in his mouth. He's holding it, it can't fall. The raya of La ilaha illallah cannot fall. So Ali is every single battle, he's the flag bearer. In Badr, in Uhud, Hamza radiallahu anhu says, Ya Rasulullah, give me the flag. He's the general of the army. He takes it and he runs deep into the enemy's lines and he's going directly for the enemy. Imagine Hamza radiallahu anhu, he has a sword in each hand. He used to be known for having a sword in each hand. And he's coming and he cuts the first guy, second guy, third guy, fourth guy. It's said that Hamza radiallahu anhu killed 30 people on the day of Uhud before he was struck radiallahu anhu. To the degree that Ali radiallahu anhu said, told him, uncle, wait, give me a chance. Oh, my brother, give me a chance. And he radiallahu anhu also engaged. My favorite story about Ali radiallahu anhu comes in the battle of Ahzab, Khandaq. When all of the land, all the Arabian Peninsula gathered to completely decimate a small population of people. Does it ring a bell? A small population of people cornered in one part of the world, surrounded by everyone, and all the maka'id and all of the plans of the enemies of Allah are against them. And a man stands up to the Muslim army. Obviously the Muslims had built a trench and they're hiding behind it, and it's very scary times. When you hear about Battle of Khandaq, very scary. That even Allah describes it in Surah Al-Ahzab. You have an entire chapter in Surah ascribed just to this event, Surah Al-Ahzab. وَإِذْ بَلَغَتِ الْقُلُوبُ الْحَنَاجِرَ وَتَظُنُّونَ بِاللَّهِ الظُّنُونَ. And the hearts reach the throats. You know when something happens so egregious, so difficult, that your heart stops and almost you have this bulge in your throat. You can't cry or you can't say anything. وَبَلَغَتِ الْقُلُوبُ الْحَنَاجِرَ وَتَظُنُّونَ بِاللَّهِ الظُّنُونَ. You start thinking, having doubts about Allah. Who is the Quran talking about? It's talking about the Sahaba, the best generation of mankind. They are having doubts about the promise of Allah. وَتَظُنُّونَ بِاللَّهِ الظُّنُونَ هُنَالِكَ ابْتُلِيَ الْمُؤْمِنُونَ وَزُلْزِلُوا زِلْزَالًا شَدِيدًا. And this is an occasion in which the Muslims were tested and shaken to their core, shaken a very hard shake. And Ali radiallahu anhu, look at this occasion. There was a man amongst the Quraysh by the name of Amr ibn Wud. And the Arabs, by the way, had many huge men in stature and in size. Amongst them was Abu Jahl, but he was already killed at this point in Battle of Badr. Umar radiallahu anhu, Zubayr ibn Awam, Zubayr, when he's called the disciple of the Prophet Muhammad. لِكُلِّ نَبِيٍّ حَوَارِيٌّ وَحَوَارِيٌّ Zubayr. And Zubayr ibn Awam would get on a horse and his feet would touch the ground. I don't know if you've ever seen a horse, but horses are pretty big, right? So his feet would touch it. That's how huge he was of a human. And amongst them, bigger and more ginormous than all of them, was a man by the name of Amr ibn Wud. Amr ibn Wud attended 100 battles for Quraysh. He was not young in age, but 100 battle veteran. And he was the most giant of the Arabs. And he steps up to the trench and he stands in front of Muslims. He had a deep, strong voice. And he says, "Hal min mubaris? Is there someone to step up to me?" He says, "Oh Muhammad, I am a man who came to you loving Jahannam, and I love to be in Jahannam. Give me someone so I can make them reach Jannah. Look at the disgust and the level of scorn that he has for the deen. He says, "Oh Muhammad, I would love to be in the hellfire. Give me a man so I can send him to Jannah." The Muslims hear this, and the Prophet gets up and he says, "Man yakhruju lah." Who comes out to him? Who will come out to this guy? Who will show him his place? Ali radiallahu anhu heard him say, "Oh Muhammad, I came to you desiring Jahannam. Give me a man so I can send him to Jannah." He heard that and something just broke. He was like, "Me, Ya Rasulullah, me." In this occasion, he's 23 years old. 23 years old. He tells him, "Ya Rasulullah, me." So the Prophet says, "Ali, sit down, ijlis. You're small. This is Innahu Amr ibn Wood." Even the Prophet, he's telling him, "This is Amr ibn Wood. Sit down, Ali." Man lahu. The Prophet continues. It's like a fundraiser where no one wants to pay. Man lahu. Who will get up? Everyone is quiet. Everyone is silent. Ali radiallahu anhu gets up and says, "Ya Rasulullah, ana lah. Let me go, Ya Rasulullah. Let me go, I'll show you." Ali, sit down. Yeah, Ali, sit down. A third time, no one responds. And we're talking about Abu Bakr, we're talking about Umar, Zubayr, all these brave names, there's Abu Ubayd ibn Jarrah, all these big names of the Sahaba. No one gets up. And Ali gets up third time, "Ya Rasulullah, ana laha." And so the Prophet says, "Ya Ali, inni astawda'aka Allah." He says, "Ali, خلاص استودعت الله فيك." He tells him, "Here, take my imam." He gives him his hat, and he starts making dua. Allahumma inni istawda'tuka Ali. Allahumma inni istawda'tuka Allah. He's dead. To him, he's not coming back. This is Amr ibn Wood. And the Prophet is making dua, scared for this man whom he raised like his son. And Ali steps into the trench with Amr ibn Wood, this hulk of a man on his horse. And all he has himself tied, only his eyes are showing. And yet Amr ibn Wood tells him, "Who are you? Who are you? Let me see your face. Be a man, let me see your face." He says, I am a mu'min amongst the believers who desires Jannah. So Amr ibn Wood looks at him and he says, "Let me see your face." And he sees his face and he sees that it's Ali ibn Abi Talib. He says, "Inni la uridu an ufji'a abaka fik." He says, "Your dad was my friend. I don't want to," this is an expression the Arabs used to use, that I don't want to send your parents in a state of shock. Obviously in English I have to use 60 words to describe four words in Arabic. "Inni la uridu an ufji'a abaka fik." I don't want to send your family in shock, in sadness and grief over you by killing you. He said, "Your dad was my friend." And Abu Talib at this point had died. He says, "I don't want to upset your father. Go back, little one." He says, "Wallahi, I am going to be the man to send you to Jahannam." He tells him straight up, "I'm here to send you to Jahannam." And so Amr looks at him and Ali, when he's getting ready to fight him, Ali tells him, "I want 3 conditions for you. The first thing, I want you to say, La ilaha illallah, uriduka an tashhadu annahu la ilaha illallah, wa anna Muhammadan Rasulullah." Even a Muslim in a state of warfare will seek peace, and not only that, will give da'wah, call him to Allah. He's calling this kafir fajr, this dude who blatantly cries out, calling, "I want Jahannam." Nobody says this. He just say La ilaha illallah. We don't need to fight. Say La ilaha illallah. That's the first condition, before I fight you. Amr says, "La hajata bi biha." I'm not going to say La ilaha illallah. He says, "Okay, then turn back, go back to Quraysh, and don't fight us Muslims. Just don't fight, leave. I'm giving you an opportunity to leave." And Amr ibn Wood was known as the most brave man amongst the Arabs. So Amr told him, there's no way I turn back. Quraysh will think I'm a kafir. And I don't want Quraysh to think that I'm a kafir. He says, "Okay, then the third condition is that you fight on your horse, and I'm going to fight from the ground, so that the enemies of Allah can see that the Muslims from the ground killed the enemies of Allah on their horses." See, he went peaceful first, peaceful second, third response, he gives him the mental warfare, the mental whipping. And by the way, when he first joined, I forgot to mention this, but I'm going to ask him, why didn't someone else come? He says, why didn't someone else come from the companions of Muhammad? And so he tells him that all the companions of Muhammad would have come, but I was the one to get up to you. I'm the least brave amongst them, I'm the least in Iman amongst them, and there are people who are with more Iman behind me, but I'm the one who's here to send you to Jahannam. That was his response. So even in that moment, he's humble, he's strong, he displays strength. Everything is exact with Ali radiallahu anhu. His justice is exact. He doesn't say too much, he doesn't say too little. He calls him to Islam, but he's ready to kick him. He's ready to beat him up, right? No jokes with him. And so the Sahaba describe that they start to hear the clashing of swords, and they start to hear fighting and screaming and grunting and the sounds of battle. And after a very long time, after a few minutes, Ali radiallahu anhu, they hear Allahu Akbar. And so the Sahaba got more scared. They thought Amr ibn Wad had killed Ali, and he was just deceiving the Muslims to come out and so he can kill them. Until Ali radiallahu anhu appeared over the trench with the head of Amr ibn Wad held in one hand, shouting Allahu Akbar. I love this story. Look at the izzah that one man can bring to a group of people who are scared, who are helpless in this situation. Look at the izzah and the glory. Why can't it be you or I or you, my sister? Why can't you be the voice of steadfastness, the voice of wisdom, the voice of strength? Wallahi, in the beginning of the situation, the conflict of Gaza, the genocide of Gaza, there were voice messages going around of some of the women of Gaza telling the relatives here who are upset over their hal there, telling them, be steadfast, remember Allah, we are okay, we're remembering Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, whatever happens, happens. This is our test. And they are, wallahi, pushes you to tears because they are the ones in that situation, and instead of you making them steadfast, they are the ones making you steadfast. And that's why you can only compare these people to the Sahaba. It comes very close to the Sahaba. These are how the Sahaba of the Prophet were. Look at the story of Ali. Look at the story of Ali. There are stories of people like Ali, brave like Ali. It's the same story. You draw parallels to it. The last story, and perhaps we end with this, because I really want to tell this story as well. You want to add something before we continue?
The pizza's on the way, so no one's leaving out the pizza anyway.
It's a very bad announcement. No one's going to be thinking about Ali the I trust you guys. I trust you guys. You guys are going to think about Ali the In the battle, in the next battle we're going to talk about is also Khaybar. Ali radiallahu anhu in the battle of Khaybar became sick, something lying in his eye, and so his left eye became completely blind. The Prophet ﷺ gave the liwa, the flag, to Abu Bakr on the first day. And Khaybar was a very, very difficult battle. It was a battle against the Jews. And it was not against the Jews because we hate Jews and because we're anti-Semitic and all of these claims that people have against the Prophet ﷺ, but it was because the Jews that lived in Medina breached a treaty that they had with the Prophet ﷺ. And then later on, again in Al-Khandaq, the Jews that left Medina and were kicked out of Medina because they breached the contract, and like living in any state the same way, that if I were to let out national security secrets here in the US, I would be charged with what? Treason, and I would be up command for what? The death penalty. We don't mess around. Here in the US, America, right? The death penalty is for those who commit treason. So the same way you commit treason in Medina, not because we hate the specific people, I just want to be very clear about this, because the enemies of Islam are plenty. And what they claimed against the Prophet ﷺ also are plenty. We do not hate a people. We do not hate people for their faith. We do not hate an ethnic group. We do not hate anyone. However, for you to betray the Prophet ﷺ and stab him in the back was exactly what happened with the Jews of Medina, and they were kicked out. And later they went on to these forts in Khaybar. There were multiple forts, and the last and the biggest one amongst them, and the most difficult to open, took 3 days. They had food stocked for a year, wealth stocked for a year. So all they had to do was sit back, play defense, and food and water and all other forms of sustenance are there in these forts. And so the Prophet ﷺ surrounds the final fort and he gives the flag to Abu Bakr. Abu Bakr goes on the first day, they do not open the fort. The second day he gives the flag to Umar radiallahu anhu. Umar goes and they attack, they don't open the fort. So the Prophet ﷺ sees that morale is down, the army's morale is down. On the last and final day he announces sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he says, tomorrow I'm going to give the flag to a man who loves the Prophet ﷺ, who loves Allah and His Prophet ﷺ. And all the Sahaba wanted them to be, they wanted to be the man. Umar said, I never loved for Imara, I never wanted the Imara in my life, I never wanted to be the leader in my life, except on that occasion to prove that he loves Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and Allah and the Prophet ﷺ. And some of the Sahabis described that the Prophet on that day is holding the flag and he's looking at the Prophet in anticipation. He's smiling at him like he's going to give it to me. He's going to give it to me. And the Prophet smiles at him and walks right past him and gives it to Ali. He says, where's Ali? They say, Ya Rasulullah, his left eye is completely blocked. So the Prophet says, bring him to me. And they bring Ali to him, and he takes some of his saliva, rubs it in his eye, and Ali says, my left eye became stronger than my right eye. And it never weakened till the day he died. Why does he keep getting these special treatment from the Prophet? Because he keeps putting his body on the line. So you put your body on the line, Allah is going to raise your status. Allah is going to help you, aid you, support you with every way you need. And by the way, this doesn't work for us. So if someone, subhanAllah, gets something in his eye, don't put your salat, take your salat and put it in his eye. This is a karam for the Prophet. Musaylima al-Kadhab, actually in one of the battles, they said that a man, he got something in his eye. So he went and he wanted to do like the Prophet. The story is well known that Ali put something in his eye, he rubbed it out, it became strong. Musaylima took his saliva, and Musaylima was a false prophet. He puts it in the man's eye, the man becomes even more blind. So, subhanAllah. Anyways, Ali goes and the Prophet says, don't look back. Go and don't look back. And look at the tatbiq, look at the action of Ali. He says, I went, and I wanted to ask the Prophet a question. But I remember the Prophet said, don't turn around. So he walked backwards to the Prophet and he asked the question. We're laughing now, but look at to what degree they applied the words of the Prophet ﷺ. To what degree? Look at the ummah today that does not apply anything about the Prophet ﷺ. As a matter of fact, in the house, in the land of the Prophet ﷺ, we build a fake Kaaba and we bring Iggy Azala and all these different, subhanAllah, different people to perform there in the name of an open-mindedness. And subhanAllah, you're returning, you're walking backwards. Other parts of the Muslim world, nobody applies what the Prophet is saying to the exact. And that's why we're being helped. That's why the enemies of Allah are able to overpower us easily. This is the concept here, my brothers and sisters. It's not difficult. The ummah of Muhammad is an ummah that defeats itself. We are not an ummah that is defeated by an enemy. Even when the enemies defeat us, it is because there are those amongst us who sold us out. This is always the theme. There are sellouts amongst the ummah, they sell us out, we lose to the enemy. The ummah defeats itself. But the ummah of Muhammad never actually loses to an actual enemy when it is believing in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Look at the Battle of Uhud. Why did we lose the Battle of Uhud? They were actually victorious in the beginning. They toppled Hamza, Ali was the one who killed the enemy flag bearer. But the Roman left the hill, the archers left the hill, so what happened? The Muslims were obliterated after. Even though they were already collecting the spoils of war. An ummah that only defeats itself. This is the ummah of Muhammad. When we wake up to this, you start to realize your power. We think we are powerless. We think we are poor. We think we have no military capabilities, no political capabilities. When we have all the military capabilities, when we have all the political capabilities. Back in the 80s or the 70s, one of the kings of Saudi stopped producing oil to the US, so they stopped bombing Palestine at the time. They stopped their advance on Palestine at the time. Just by turning off some oil tanks. We have the capability, but we don't know our own power. The beautiful thing about Ali radiallahu anhu is he knows his power. He always knows his strength. He knows what he's capable of. In the battle of Khaybar, he goes forward. He calls the people to Islam. They don't believe, so they don't open the door for him. He rips the door off its hinges. The door of the fort, he fights and fights, he rips it off its hinges. And he says, I got into the battle. He's telling the story about himself, and his shield breaks. Something that gets hit so many times that his shield breaks. So he looks around for something, he picks up the door, and he uses it as a shield. Don't tell me Game of Thrones, don't tell me whatever shows that you watch that are fantasy. This is real, this is true, this happened. And he fights the battle with the door as a shield. He throws it later on. The Sahaba said, we went to pick it up. It took 8 to 10 Sahabis, they couldn't pick it up. It took 10 Sahaba, 10 men to pick up the door of the fort. That's how big that door was. When you walk in the path of Allah, Allah will melt everything in your path. You walk towards Allah, Allah will part seas for you. You walk towards Allah, Allah will raise the dead for your cause. Like Isa alayhi salam, like Musa alayhi salam. When the Jews of Khaybar saw Ali radiallahu anhu, and they asked him, who are you? He said, my name is Ali. They started to run, and they said, this is the man that Musa revealed upon you. This is what was revealed upon Musa. In the Torah, it's mentioned that you will be defeated in so-and-so place by a man by the name of Ali. Look at the karamat of this companion, and there is so much to Ali's stories. There's so much after the Prophet said, on the day the Prophet dies. So much more to be told, but there is not enough time for us, and I want to end here.
Yeah, I'm gonna just to kind of summarize everything. So obviously, bravery is one of the biggest things that we talked about today, right? The leadership of Ali. He set the tone. He was an example, right? Nowadays, I mean, to be honest, I think the biggest takeaway we can take from this is our leaders are in the Quran. Our leaders are in our Sahaba. Our leader is the Prophet ﷺ. We need to stop looking for leaders in these governments of Muslim countries. We need to stop looking for that. They don't exist. They're the opposite of leaders, right? We need to really start looking into the Quran. Those are our leaders. Those are the people we should follow. Those are the people that will set the tone for us. The problem is it's a problem. It's a problem. Not to name names, not to go any further.
There's a lot to be said, but not enough time to say it, not enough space, maybe not the right space or the right time to.
So update here. I just got a text.
This is about the pizza.
I don't know if I should read this out loud, but the pizza is inside the trunk, and they locked themselves out. So we're going to get it out the trunk, inshallah. And once we do, the pizza will be here, inshallah ta'ala. So I can't.
I was waiting for the pizza.
I cannot make that up. That's why, if you notice, I'm trying to elongate the conversation a little bit.
That was the one thing I was looking forward to.
No, it will be here. Just it's gonna go out on me, right? So
maybe take some questions, inshallah.
yeah, let's do
Any questions, comments, concerns?
While we figure out the trunk thing.
Brother, what is the origin of the title when you say Ali's name, you say Qadar Allah Wajha? I've heard that, since I was young. Most of the companions you say Allah Anhu. But with Ali, he has a special, title, sort of. Qadar Allah Wajha. Can you elaborate on that, please?
I actually don't know that. Sorry, I don't know the origins. Do you know maybe you can share with us?
Well, that's why I'm asking the question.
No, I don't know. You have something?
There was a man from the Khawarij who disrespected Ali during his Khalifa. So after one of the battles when Ali was defeated the Khawarij, Sallallahu Alaihi. So in response, the companions later, the Tabi'in, like Abu Hanifa and the later people, they responded to this insult to reaffirm the honor of Ali. So that's why they say, and people of Ahl Sunnah say until this day, Karamallah.
Beautiful question, and Jazakumullah khair for sharing that with us. Allah bless you guys.
This after that, the lights on body.
After the lifetime. Any other questions?
So this definitely, needs a lot of discussion, but whatever you can, inshallah. But what's the controversy
I
behind
knew
it?
it was going there. I knew it was going there.
Around what, sir?
Like certain beliefs about him.
So very quickly, in a very respectful fashion, what we have today is two aqa'idi sects, if you will. You have in the Muslim world, you have the Sunnah and the Shia, but the Shia, they did not start off as a aqidah, they started off as a political ideology to support Ali radiallahu anhu. And it's a very, very long topic and a long discussion with many different parts. And Sanjay and I had spoken about this beforehand, and we decided not to cover it because we only covered very little about Ali. I mean, you guys talked about Fatima radiallahu anha, about Abdullah, and a lot of Ali, we talked a lot about Ali's more social dynamics and how he was with Fatima radiallahu anha, all these different situations. So, and we only talked about his bravery radiallahu anha. We didn't even go past the death of the Prophet ﷺ, what he did on that day, what are the things that arose on that day, what happened later in the Khilafah of Abu Bakr and Umar. Imam Ahmad, look, I'm going to give you what I think is the best. Imam Ahmad says that we're talking about conflict, specifically the conflict between, in these times, in that time period, hardens the heart. So unless it's not for a crowd that fully understands the context, and we have the time, this needs like a 4, 5, 6 week series to discuss it. So maybe even more. So honestly, what I recommend, if you want that question answered, find the series online. I recommend, Sheikh Yasir Ali has the Sahaba series, excellent. You should definitely check that out. If you speak Arabic, you definitely put you onto some other Shaykh as well. But take your time to hear, and don't listen to it to just find out what the conflict is. We're more interested in the life of the companion, and then these are some incidents that came up, and alhamdulillah we take them on the book. If you don't mind me, forgive me, my answer is I don't know.
I'm going to throw something in there as well. I think, so I'm going to lead with the quote of Imam Shafi'i, that if loving the family of the Prophet ﷺ is sinful, then that is a sin I would never reject. That was quoted from Shafi'i. Meaning it's our obligation. I think it's important that we talk about Ali because it's important that we talk about Ali because I think as from our beliefs, we might shy away from talking about Ali sometimes. Just because we know what the other group does, right? That might just be a thing. Like for example, it took me a long time to really start learning about Ali. Because I just didn't know where to learn. I felt like if I Googled it, it was going to get messy, right? So I think we need to make an obligation upon ourselves to learn about the family of the Prophet ﷺ. And it's important. And we did cover so many, members of the Bayt as well.
Just to reiterate what we said in the beginning, that Ahlul Bayt, we love them exactly as they need to be loved. We don't love them more. We don't put them on a pedestal that they don't deserve. We don't lower them to anything less than what they deserve. We love them as they deserve to be loved, and then we keep it at that. And we don't say anymore.
But if you want facts, like if you want just like straight up, Abu Bakr was entitled to the Khalifa. There's no doubt about that.
We're going into it.
No, but hold on. Let's just clarify that. And anybody who insults Abu Bakr, this view, anybody who insults anybody, any companion, is
it's a kafir.
now you crack. You know what? I can say that. That's his words.
So let's not get into it. That's why there's so many things.
There's issues with that. You just cannot possibly insult a companion of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Abu Bakr, Umar, these are great Sahaba. that you know.
I told you let's not open this back up.
You took this whole other way. So okay, next question. No more controversial questions. Yeah, you got another one?
Maybe give this just a chance. Maybe they have something. We'll get back to each other.
We gotta cut that from the live stream, please. Yes.
I think most of the confusion can just be solved by the fact that man, married the daughter of Umar. When he prayed behind the 3,000, we all know that it's not allowed, that it's makruh or haram to pray behind someone that is in the innovator or a pastor. So if he thought that they were evil or bad, why did he pray behind them? Why would he marry the daughter? Why would he name his kids after them?
Facts, you're right, 100%.
Umar married the daughter of Ali. Not Ali married the daughter.
Exactly, yeah. And then at the same time, when Abu Bakr passed away, Ali said what? He wrote a whole eulogy as a brother read when he talked about Abu Bakr. So we're waiting on we're still waiting on the spare key for the car. So it's coming though, it's coming. I promise you guys. I didn't plan for the trunk to get, but I don't know what happened. So any other questions we can answer? No more controversial ones, please. Yeah.
Also, the Sunnah companion Abu Muhammad, they're very right next to our beloved.
That's all right. Yeah, exactly. You're right.
What more proof do you need?
You're right. Yes, sir.
Is there going to be a beloved issue?
There will be a halakha next week, inshallah. They'll be on Omar. So come through next week, inshallah, 7 p.m. Anything else y'all want to talk about? Is there Kahoot tonight? No, because I was paying for the pizza tonight. But now we have neither at this very moment in time.
I have backup the boots.
Yep, about what?
Ask the guys.
Yeah, we have this.
I have code sprint.
Well, we have to bring a whole.
We use the halqa and magnetism.
Okay.
Shameless plug, come to Brooklyn. Shameless plug, come to Brooklyn. We have a masjid 9818 for Hamilton Parkway. Halqa every Friday and Wednesday. Shameless plug.
I don't know if that's something you want to do.
What?
His on the fly Kahoots. Do you want to do that?
We'll keep it in mind.
Yeah?
Now?
I mean, that's the only thing, smart board.
Oh.
Yeah.
No, it's a projector. I carried it.
Did we cut the live stream, by the way?
Yeah.
Can we